Welcome to Woodlot's results online session. I am going to go through some simple steps about how to get access to Woodlots and go through the simple data entry for results. So first of all, I have up the results main homepage. And if you have not had any access to results already, the first thing you must have is a BCE ID account. So if you do not have one, there's a link on the far right hand side of the web page which allows you to put in a request for a BCE ID account. So that's the first step you have to go through. Once you have a BCE ID account, the next step is to request for results access. So on our web page, you will see that there is a non-government user, which will be BCE ID holders. And if you click on that, there is going to be a link that will allow you to make a request for results using your BCE ID account. And on there, you have to read through a little bit further to identify what kind of request you need. So for results, we have view access. So you're not able to update any information, but you're able to just look at the information. And view also gives you reporting capability as well. The next level is the update. And then what that does is that allows you to actually physically change information for the records. But the only thing you cannot do is declarations, which is the final step, which is declaration authority. So the way it works is that declaration is the highest authority, so you can do everything below it as far as the declarations can do update as well as viewing. So based on who you are, what level of authority you need, you have to specify that on the form itself, and then it gets submitted, and then when you get approved, then you can go into results. So you have to make sure you read the results access policy. So just to note that for Woodlot holders, if you are updating information online, what happens is that if you update or declaration authority, you will need to be able to go through a competency test to demonstrate you know enough about results before we will grant you that access. And the reason behind that is to make sure that we maintain good data integrity. So there are a bunch of training modules that are available on the results website. So you can explore these on your own. So the left-hand tab here shows you where the training resources are, which will take you to the various different modules we have. So there's slideshows as well as other recordings that will talk about the individual topics. And so what happens is that a lot of the tests is based on a variety of different modules that are actually offered in the training modules. So back to results. Is that once you have your results application, then this button here takes you to the actual results application itself. So it seems to be a little bit slow right now. Don't know why. So the next thing you have to do is go through authentication. So again, I'm selecting an IDER account because that's my user access, but you would actually log in as a BCE ID account holder, so depending on who you are. And then what happens is that you'll get notified what organization unit or client number you want to be as. So you select that, and then we are taken to the main results page. So this is actually the production environment. And so I just want to go through the sort of the pathway that you would have to go through to get into results. But for the purpose of my training session, what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch over to the test environment just so that I can go in and actually update records. So it looks the same but the data is different in that I can actually go and muck around with it without impacting production data. So what's going to happen is I'm just going to walk through the simple steps and screens that are involved that will kind of get you started with being able to use results online. So one of the first things I'll go through is the search feature, because some people have a hard time sometimes knowing what records are already in the system. So when you do go through your search, you will know already up front which districts you belong to. And so in this one case, I've got a sample data that I'll be working with. So what happens is that you select the district and you can enter your woodlot number and select search, and then it'll return a list of different cut blocks that belongs to that license number. So you can search using a variety of methods. You could even get more specific, being going with license and CP, and then it gets a little bit more restrictive. But in this case, I just used the license. So it's really up to you how you want to use this. So that's just to help you out if you have a hard time with knowing or reviewing how many different openings you have that's in the system. The first thing that we will do is going through the opening inquiry. It's the basic screen that identifies the opening that we want to work with. So the way results works is that you have to specify what record you're interested in using or calling up. And most of you will be using probably the tenure reference, which is comprised of the combination of the license, cutting permit, and cut block number. So you have to enter all three for the system to be able to recognize the record. Or you have also the ability using the opening ID, which is a unique number that the system assigns for a given opening when it's created. So you have either options. So once you enter in this case, the tenure key, you select go. And then what happens is that the record is called up and you will get the information about the opening that results has. First is the top part of the screen is what we call the tombstone, and that's the referential information we have about the opening, and that tombstone carries through to all the different screens that results has. Then below it, in this case, we have the high-level information about the opening, and we have information about the opening category code. So if it was a woodlot license, it will be FTWL. Again, some of the data look a little bit odd here because it's test data. But you'll have opening category code, status information about the opening, and then we have a whole bunch of information that's actually pulled from FTA. So that's the forced tenure system. So what happens is that when you create an opening in results, you have to supply cut block information and tenure information, and that happens to be something that exists through FTA. And when you supply that as a results submission for the first time, it confirms that the cut block that you're providing as a reference makes sense. It actually exists in FTA. And if it does, then it links up to FTA, and then all the information that FTA has about the tenure is pulled and displayed in results. So this information here about the tenure and the management unit, all that is actually display information pulled or derived from FTA. We don't store that in results. And then we have some other derived information, which is just generalized information at the opening level about the declaration information, the due date information, etc. But this is generalized from information from the milestone. And then usually when an opening is created, there's pieces of information that's supplied. So some of the pieces are things like the previous stand label, and there's maximum permanent access, allowable permanent access, and the opening gross area. The other next level of information that's provided during the opening creation or opening definition stages is the multi-tenure. So what the multi-tenure is that it's providing an identification of what cut blocks are associated with the opening. An opening have the ability to have a multi-cut block scenario. There can, a lot of times it's just one cut block per opening, but if you need to, you can have multiple, and this is where that information would be displayed. And so what happens is that there always will be one cut block that is what is the prime, and if we have more cut blocks, those are always non-prime. And what will happen is that whichever cut block tenure reference is identified as the prime, that is what then becomes reference as part of the opening tombstone. So that's the stuff you'll see on the top part here. So in this case, we have cut block 1 as the prime, so that's what then becomes reference for this opening. Generally speaking, the prime cut block would be the larger area, but that's not the case here because it's just test data. So, but it's the licensees that designate which one is the prime cut block if there is a multiple cut block scenario. Moving on to the next piece of information that the opening has. During the opening definition stages, the other piece of information that is supplied is the site plan. So in this case, we have a site plan which is comprised of 2 standards units. And so you can see here on the side here that it will indicate how many SUs we are dealing with. And if you need to view other standards unit, you can toggle back and forth using the arrows. So the standards unit is really the legal obligation where you delineate the net area to be reforested, and you provide also information about the biogeoclimatic zone classification and the stocking standard. So there's usually an approved stocking standard that is applied to the standards unit, and when that happens during the opening definition, all of this information that's appearing here are derived and ripple through based on this approved stocking standard. So we have 2 standards unit, and what happens is that the last piece of information that is provided at the opening definition stage is also the map. This is the SP map that will provide the boundaries of the standards unit as well as the opening boundary. So what happens here is that this is all the big piece of the opening definition that comes in. And once the opening is created, this spatial line work that is supplied as a part of the opening definition that it's called the spatial, it's called the GML or the geometry. That comes in, and when the opening is approved, there's the generation of the geometry to create what is called a SP map, and this SP map is a rendered image, so it's static. So it's like a PDF document that you can see it online what it looks like, but you can't really do anything other than just look at the map. But should you want to be able to see this spatial line work for the opening in context with a tool, a true map viewing tool, you are able then to click on this map view link within results that will take you to map view, so that then you can see this opening in context to other spatial information, other openings around the area. So you have a very basic map viewing tool that's available tied to results that you can get to, and the map view, some people quite like it, and you can actually be able to turn on and off different imagery as well. So it's just another tool you have. So that site plan has the map, and the map is used to generate spatial line work, render image, and then that spatial line work is used and stored in information in it's the GeoBC warehouse. So it's like a data warehouse that houses information about results data. And so the opening information may be used by a lot of other people outside of just ministry staff. It could be a lot of other people that can pull and extract information for doing other kinds of analysis as well. So opening inquiry, multi-tenure, and stocking standards are really the pieces that are coming in as part of the opening definition. And then as far as results, we have the ability to track disturbance and silviculture reports. So when submissions are coming in, the information comes through, and you can view this information through using the activity tab. You can go into details to view the information. And for those people that have view options, what will happen is where there's ability to save or delete data, those would be grayed out. You can't do that. But for people that have update or declaration status, those buttons will appear available. And that's why we make sure that those people have been trained so they don't accidentally do things they're not supposed to, because essentially you can actually do a lot of damage with modifying data, deleting data, etc. So you have the ability to go in and view disturbance reports as they're reported. The same applies for silviculture activities. And really what's important here is that you have the capability of also adding disturbance reports as well as adding silviculture reports. So just as a simple example here, for this particular opening, if I have done some kind of harvesting, again, this is just to show you how the entry works. The requirements would be, if it was a harvesting activity, you need to provide silvicultural system in terms of the codes like silvicultural system, variant, and cut phase, and some dates, the area, and the disturbance code, which would be L if it was logging. And so if it was a natural disturbance, you wouldn't have to provide the silvicultural system codes, and you would have a different disturbance code. So once you enter the information that matches your disturbance information, you select save, and then, oops, I didn't do the right date. There's some sort of logic error to make sure that you're not there's some sort of integrity errors that will be going through. So if you have problems, you just figure out what it is. I just was kind of blindly putting in the dates, but you have real dates that you'll be plunking in. And once you've entered in your disturbance report, you hit save. If it says save successful, it means that it's done, it's in the system. So if we were to go back to the report, you'll see that the disturbance record that I just created here appears here. So that's entry of a disturbance report. You have the capability of adding silviculture reports as well. When we go into add activity, you have the ability of specifying planned or completed activity. Majority of you will supply completed report, but you can use results to schedule planned activities into the future should you want to do that. So I select completed activity. I'm just going to keep it simple and report that I've done a site prep. So you report what you have to report, but the mandatory information would be the type of activity, base technique method, the funding source, the activity date, as well as the treatment amount. So there's certain minimums that are required as far as entry. And once you are done, you select save, and it does a check. If everything is met as far as the data entry requirements, then it'll tell you save is successful. I just did a very simple one for site prep, but if we did actual planting, your planting report will be different based on selection of the planting base code. What will happen is that you'll find that there will be additional fields that will appear that will indicate that you're going to be providing additional information that is associated with planting. And that's because the requirements are that you need to provide species information, the number of trees planted, if you exceeded the transfer limit, as well as what the lot number is. So that's a seed lot. And there's validation checks to make sure the lot numbers matches the species based on what is actually stored in SPAR. So once you enter all that, you save, and then if you don't have any errors, then it's official. So that's the planting report should you need to enter that in. So the key here is that for results, you have the capability of entering disturbance reports and silviculture reports online. And so it's fairly straightforward to do that on your own. And so that's just something that people may not be familiar with, but it's certainly simple enough to do. The next component of results is it's the force cover. So usually when we get the opening definition, there's usually also harvesting that has been taken place, and there's a force cover that describes the opening and the depletion. And so once that force cover is submitted, the spatial information is provided, and this would be the information that's provided as far as the polygon information, and you could scroll through multiple polygons as you need to. And again, this is test data, so it might look a little bit odd, but the idea here is that you can see the individual polygons and the details. And also what's important is that when the force cover comes through, the mandatory requirement is that force cover has to have spatial. So the spatial that is related to each of the polygons are provided. And so once the information comes through, the spatial information becomes transposed and creates this rendered image again. So if you want to see this information dynamically in a real mapping tool, you can select the map view option, and then you can see the force cover polygon in sort of a live environment with context with other spatial information, so you can zoom in and out and navigate around to sort of view that information dynamically. So one of the things that you have the capability of is when you go into force cover, there is an edit feature. And what's really important to note is that if you are involved with needing to update your force cover, and if your force cover polygon has already been submitted before, and the line work is not changing, and all you're doing is updating the label, you may go into this edit feature, whereby then you can go and change the label. You can't change the spatial, but you can go in and actually change the actual label to reflect, density, species changes, etc. So it's a bit clunky because this force cover was really not well designed for data entry for force cover, because the initial concept was all the force cover would come through GML, ESF files with a GML, but there is the facility there to actually just update the label. So you could go in and change the data elements as you need to, but you can see that it can be a little bit clunky to work with, right? And again, some of this look a little bit goofy because it's test data, but what happens is that when you do that, you are essentially keeping the spatial information as is, but you've really just updated the label to reflect changes in species composition or age or density information. And so some people have suggested that this might be an easy way of just doing force cover updates to meet the legislative requirements if their boundaries are the same, without having to go through full ESF submission for force cover. So you're able to do this online on your own if it applies. So when we go into force cover edits, you have the capability of doing that, but it's really important you have to do the edits through going through the detail function, right? So that's when the edit function is available for you, right? You see a new force cover option available, but you have to be very careful of that, because when you create a new force cover, it essentially just deletes the force cover altogether, including spatial. So it won't work for you guys to create new force cover. It doesn't sound like it's kind of counterintuitive, but that's just the way it's set up. And also you're able to delete force cover, and that's probably not something you really want to do. So that is force cover edit. So moving along, we have also milestones. Milestones allows you to do declarations, and the way it works is that I've already done declarations here already, but what happens is that if you wanted to update your declaration, you have to have the proper authorization. So with people that have view and just view and update authority, you will not be able to come in here. You'll find everything grayed out because you don't have that level of authority. So declaration authority allows you to have the ability to make changes here. So what happens is that there is authorization confirmation that you know what you're doing and you're a professional, or have so you have to basically know what you're doing, right? when it comes to doing declaration. And then what happens is that you can provide the date, which I've already done from a previous example demonstration. And then you can also provide comments. And once you've done all that, you select save, and then the declaration is saved. So it's simple as that. So what happens is that if there was comments made, generally it's good practice. Most people are putting the declaring professional and any added information that's required. So in some situations, there's like a Section 108 relief of obligation, or in some cases, there is a declaration under 97.1 for the extent practicable. So there's some language sometimes that is a requirement to be entered in also in the comments. So this is where some of those things may go. So should there be a need to, you can also undeclare. This would be if there was a mistake. But again, when you undeclare, you should provide some context or a message about why you're doing that. And so that's milestones. So what I've shown you, you can actually make changes online for activities, force cover, and milestones. We have, you can explore some of these other tabs on your own. We also have the ability to add attachments to an opening. So again, people with update authority or declaration authority can actually physically add attachments. Attachments are something that it's really at the discretion of the opening, the woodlot owner, if they need to provide supplemental information to describe something, to provide context, then you can add a document to the actual opening file. I think they allow like Word files, PDF files. If you need more information about attachments and standards, we actually have that on our procedural website for results. And that is it. So those are all the main components that you just need to know about. So again, you can do the search if you need to find all the openings that are associated with your woodlot. And the other two last things is that whenever there's changes to results, we have this history button, which allows us to see sort of all the chronology of changes that have occurred. So this history provides you with details about all the changes in terms of what was done, if there was updates to it, what was the extent of some of the updates. So there's kind of this data tracking of everything that's happened. So that's something for you to note, that there is the auditing capability that is there, and it's occasionally used for doing some verification or checks. And also for dealing with standards unit, from time to time, these openings, the life cycle spans 20 years. So sometimes there's a need to make changes to the standards units because of some variety of reasons. If there's a need to make modifications to standards units, there's ability to do approved variations and site plan amendments online or through ESF. I won't go through that here. We do have specific recordings that goes through this stuff in a lot of detail in our training recording websites. So I suggest you go and look through for that. But when there are changes to the SUs, there's this SU history button that allows you to see what is the extent of the changes. So again, you can see if there's multiple SUs, what are some of the things that have been done. It shows in red what was the net new change under, in this case, a site plan amendment. So this information is tracked in the SU history, and the SU history only came into existence since 2008. So anything prior to that, we don't have that tracked in this method, while the history starts at the beginning of results from the beginning of time. So that's the other alternative. If we need to go backwards and look at all the changes to SUs, we have this ability to use the history button to track that. So that is pretty much the stuff online I wanted to go through. And I think really the key here is that it isn't hard to learn to go into results to verify opening records. So it should be pretty easy to do that. But you see that it doesn't take a lot of effort to be able to go in and update activity reporting and silviculture reporting. And if you have used ESF submissions in the past for providing force cover updates, then what happens is that if spatial line work is pretty much the same for the polygons that you have for the opening, you can actually go into force cover and use that edit function to update the label. And so this way it might save you some transactional costs without having to go through and pay for a service provider to do all those. So some things you still have to do through ESF, like the initial submissions for providing the opening boundaries, the site plan boundaries, as well as force cover. But thereon afterwards, it just depends on the scope of what has happened on the opening and how complicated it is, and whether you can actually get away with doing some of this stuff online. So that's the main sort of message I want to have for you guys. And the next big piece I wanted to show you was in our reports, we've got this opening summary report. And so right now we've got, this is a test environment. Soon, in a month's time, this will be operational in the production environment. So I wanted to show you both. But what happens is that this report is hooked up so that when you're in a given opening, if you click on the opening summary report, what that does is that it bounces into a new reporting feature called Jasper Reports. And there is a opening, we call it the opening details report. It's the opening summary report, where it transposes that opening that I was in with that opening ID. So it just pretty much flips that directly over. And this report allows you can toggle everything to yes to show the details, to run a report where it provides you full detail of everything for the opening. So you saw me, I just ran that. So I select OK, I went apply, and then now I'm going to go OK to get rid of that screen. So you see the output of the report. This looks really, really small, and you can scroll through this if you want, but in order for you to make use of this report, the last final step you must do is select as a PDF to then allow you to then save and print this report. So now this is actually a PDF format whereby you can save this and use it, or print it off, or use it as attachment to send off to somebody else. So this report, I'm not going to go through everything, but it will have, you can zoom in, zoom out to be able to view it. But it basically encapsulates all the different tabs in pieces of information that we see in results for the opening. So each of those tabs, you have the opening, multi-tenure, standards unit, stocking standard, activity, etc. It has pretty much all the pieces of information plus the render maps. So really this gives you a summary of everything about the opening, including the spatial. If it's rendered image there, the spatial is there. So, and what happens then when you run this report, it always gives you metadata about when the report was run. So what happens is that you can run these on your own, or if you are asking someone to submit this information, a service provider, if you don't have the ability or time to go into results yourself, you can make a request for them to have them send you the report once they finish their work. So you can actually at least verify through the PDF to verify that the work that you asked them to do has been done. So, I mean, it's kind of a nice sort of way of dealing with that if you don't want to go into results. But going into results is not a bad thing. As I showed you, you can enter some stuff on your own, and it doesn't take a lot of time and effort. So you can save yourself some money that way too, without having to go through a service provider. So you have the option of that. So this is the Jasper updated report, which is this look and feel. But what is happening now is that in the production environment, so I'm going to flip back to production environment right now. This is the world that you guys see. And I'm just going to pull up a random record. If we are in a given record right now in the production environment, if I click on the opening summary report, it takes me into corporate reporting system, which is the older infrastructure we have. but it does autofill the opening ID at the same time like it does with the new Jasper report. And you can toggle these as you need to show details, comments, etc. And you can run this to have it say, to run it online or have it emailed to yourself. And so this is currently what is available for you guys. The other format for Jasper is coming online soon. But the idea here is that it's the same report. It's just like the software behind the scenes is slightly different, but it's a moot point. The point is the data, the report has the same content to help you see exactly what is in the opening record as of the date in which you ran the report. So that's showing you whether or not the information is up to date or not. So this one is taking a little bit longer because it's a production environment versus a test environment that I was in. So just have to bear with the system because even when I was logging in, it took a little bit of time. But the idea here is this report is exactly the same look and feel as the other one we just saw earlier. Just it's called Corporate Reporting System instead of Jasper. That's all. So waiting for this thing to finish. It's just spinning away. And so, oh, good. Okay, so this is it. There's the report. And it will pretty much look exactly like the other one. The key here is that for these reports, when we go into the system, they autofill for the opening ID, but you have the capability of specifying your woodlot or a woodlot cutting permit, and it can run for a multiple of openings should you want that. But be mindful that these reports are fairly large. One opening can be 1 or 15 pages depending on what options you select. And so if you have a lot of cut blocks or a lot of openings, it can mean a lot of pages. So you just have to be careful of that. But again, these reports always have metadata to tell you when the report was run, so you can get a request or the report from your service provider, or you can run this report on your own, and you know exactly when what the status of your opening is and when it was last updated. So that is it for Jasper reports, and the thing is, like there's Crystal report and there's Jasper reports. So basically right now there's this JCRS, this Jasper report feature. And what happens is that there is going to be a lot of new reports that are available to you that you may explore on your own. And we do have training recordings that will go through that in much more detail beyond the scope of what I want to talk about today, but there's a whole slew of new reports that are available already in this Jasper report feature. And so it's something that's quite exciting. And then going back to my homepage, if you need to know more about running reports or about any other things like modifications of issues, understanding how those work, there's an online as well as ESF module about that specifically. The training sessions have a bunch of these modules available, and there's one specifically to talk about the Jasper reports. So that pretty much ends what I want to go through with you. So thank you very much.